today's patient satisfaction discussion. Often when we think about quality, we think of clinical outcomes. We think of lab results getting there timely and pharmacy management and, getting our images timely, like X-ray, CT, MR, ultrasounds, and of course, harm avoidance, like CLABSI, CADI, and HAPPIs. But, I think I'm going to suggest, not, I don't think I'm going to suggest, I'm going to suggest that equally important is whether or not we create an environment that's conducive to healing. Does the patient feel cared for? Does the patient feel secure? Sometimes for our patients in our markets, just the idea of going home can cause fear. Security, including food security and personal safety, are real problems in the communities we serve. Even if they live behind the proverbial white picket fence, things are not often as they seem. Dysfunction in families, abuse are too common in our communities. So, but what we can do is we can focus on basic needs, basic bathroom help, clean bedding when their fever breaks and their soap sitting in a pile of water, expectations about when the physician's going to come by. That's always a concern. Explanations about process. Do we smile? Do we introduce ourselves? And do we really listen to their concerns? True, we have facility challenges that compound this, such as we don't have TVs in some of our rooms, and we have multi-bedrooms. But that shouldn't stop us from asking ourselves the basic question, whether or not we really dare to care. In recent months, our ECLA team has shown the ability to convey caring to our patients. So while no survey of satisfaction or quality is perfect, oftentimes, and in this case, HCAHPS, provide some insight as to how our patients really feel about how they've been treated. I gotta say, I'm very proud of June and her team for showing us that we can help our patients feel cared for, and the results show it. So today, I'm hoping we can sit back and learn from each other, and learn how we can better convey our care and, quite frankly, our love for the communities we serve. So, Jane, thank you for putting this together. I'm going to turn the time over to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. And I hope everybody can see that slide that's on the screen. Couple things before I dive into some conversation with June. There's some dips there, but I think in our leadership team meetings, when we look at the HCAHPS scores, we look at those trajectories, and clearly there have been a couple of dips, but there's been a definite upward trend that we're excited about. And Bob, I'm going to steal some of your words because you're famous for saying this. When we worry about the N, well, gee, we only heard from 6 patients or 7 patients, but 6 or 7 patients every month over several months actually create a trend, and that's a good sample size. So we want to keep that perspective in mind as we think about HCAHPS scores, but really think about that human experience that Bob described. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and look back at all of you. If I haven't met any of you, I'm Jane Brust. It's my privilege to be Pipeline's Vice President for Marketing and Communications, and it's a real privilege to get to moderate our discussion today. So I am going to start with June Dumaguette in the hot seat. I'm just going to begin with June. No hot seat, no hot seat. We're not here to preach or do training. We're here for conversation. And June has a lot to be proud of as Chief Nursing Officer at East LA Doctors Hospital. So June, welcome. Thanks for sharing your team's experience with us today. And just to kick it off, June, tell us a little bit about how you really got focused in on patient experience and decided, we've got to work together to move the needle. How did all that get started?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So back in, as you can see from that slide that Jane presented earlier, our HCAHPS scores the beginning of 2023 was really not that great. as far as the percentile. So in May, we were like up to 7th percent. June, we're only 12%, and in July, 14%. So I kind of decided to form a patient experience committee to really improve the patient satisfaction and customer service that we provide to our patients. So back in August of 2023, we created a committee, a patient experience committee, and we sat down and really looked at what the goals are for this committee, right? We elected a chair and a co-chair. We really made this formal, and we really, as far as making the charter and putting in the goals, we made sure that they're SMART goals, just specific, measurable, right, attainable, and as far as like we decided to meet, every like twice a month for this, and it's every other Tuesday. And as far as, go ahead, Jane.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I'm going to interrupt right there and say, tell us about a few of those specific goals, because I know you said they were the SMART goals, but you put your sights on a few specific things to get started. You didn't have a laundry list of 28 things. You zeroed in on a few. What were those, June?
Yeah, so we really focused on 3 things, right? So communication with nurses, communication with medications, and care transitions. We feel like as nursing leaders, these are the things that we can control, right? And that we could get started right away and make an impact. We looked at bedside shift reporting, the communication board update, and nurse leader rounding as part of our action plan.
Great. Now, did you mention, and I'm sorry if you did, just say that there was some work on communication around medication, because you specifically had some tactics around that, communication about medication.
Yeah, so in regards to communication with medication, we have this table that has like all the more common medications that we give to our patients. And we printed this tool and we laminated it and put it in our wows. And so when the idea was, when the nurses give the medication, at least they can give a kind of a visual aid to the patients and say, okay, for this medication, these are the common side effects. This is what it's for. And it has helped as far as understanding, the type of medication. It has helped the patient as far as making sure that they understand the purpose of the medication.
So is that laminated tool, it sounds like it's a tool for conversation. Is that
Correct.
something that
A
perhaps
teaching tool.
could be a teaching tool? Great. Is that something that perhaps could be replicated at our other hospitals?
Oh yeah, definitely. We have we have the format, and it's in English and in Spanish. So it's a great teaching tool.
Great. Now, I know you mentioned care transitions, and I'm curious, what role in your improved HCAHPS scores, improved patient experience, what role did the bedside shift change play with your nurses? How did that figure into your improvements?
I think by bringing it to the bedside, right, by involving the bedside nurses, the one that really makes an impact in the care of the patient, we focused on that, and we made them realize and understand that they're the ones who really, are there for the patient and care for them. And by having the bedside shift reporting and involving the patient with the care, and really having them to understand, okay, what is the goal today, right? And by involving and updating the communication board during the bedside shift reporting also helps. So that way you have a conversation with the patient, you have a conversation with the incoming nurse, and then, together between the nurse and the patient can write the goals for the day.
And do your nurses tend to engage the family in some of that conversation with the whiteboard?
If there's family, yes, usually that would probably be more on the night shift than the day shift, since,
Mhm.
our visiting hours starts at 9 a.m. So
Right, right. Got it. Okay. Well, thanks, Jean. We're going to circle back to you
thank
in a
you.
minute, and move on to another one of our speakers from East LA. And let me mention to everybody tuning in, we are going to give you a few opportunities to ask questions and offer comments. So please be thinking about those as you're listening to our various speakers. So next up, I'm pleased to introduce Noemi Gomez from East Los Angeles Doctors Hospital. She's Director of Perinatal Services there, and she's also Chair of the Patient Experience Committee. So welcome, Noemi. I've got a few questions for you. So tell us a little bit about this committee, because June described this as a very strategic, focused group coming together. How many people are there? Who's on the committee by title or by role at the hospital? How often do you meet? Tell us a little bit more about the committee, Noemi.
Sure. So like June said, when we decided to form the committee, we wanted to have a goal, something that we could achieve. So the whole purpose of the committee was for us to provide the patients with quality care, but also with a focus on the experience for the patient and the family. So when we set up the Patient Experience Committee, we started meeting out 2 times a month. And we invited all of the nursing directors. So we have MJ, who is our med-surg tally and is also my co-chair. We invited Jose, who is our director of ER and ICU. Ed in admitting, who is ancillary. Mary Delvalle in education, because the patient experience is not just the nursing. It's going to be everybody. So we all need to be on the same page. So as June said, we focus on those 3 goals. And then the next thing is we focused on how are we going to communicate this message to everybody in the hospital, for everybody to know that we have this committee with this goal, and kind of in a way we mean business. We're really focused, and this is a goal we want everybody to achieve. So around the time that we formed the committee, it kind of coincided with, we were going to have an employee barbecue for just recognition of, I think we had some achievement, I can't remember. So we decided that we would take advantage of that event and host a kickoff event for our Patient Experience Committee. So we set up an informational booth, and I made a handout talking about, hey, the hospital has a Patient Experience Committee, and these are the 3 goals that we're going to focus on. So the communication with the nurses, the communication about the medications, and the care transitions. And then I put in there a little tidbit about AIDIT and us wanting to go back to basics in our communication. And so that day that we had the kickoff event, before everybody went over to get their food, we had them stop at our information booth, and we gave them the handout. We had them sign in, and we kind of did a little educational in-service and kind of focusing. So when I had staff come to the table that were from admitting, I would say, like, for example, you're in admitting. How do you impact our patient experience? You're the first point of contact. So when you come in, it's the way you greet the patient, the way you walk them through that registration process, where to go, and guide them. When I had staff coming through from our EVS team, I would say, you're so important also to the patient experience, because you are the focus in keeping their environment clean, which is conducive to healing, for them to feel relaxed. So I tried to make it relatable to everybody as they came through the table, and letting them know that in the coming weeks they would be hearing more about the Patient Experience Committee and how we were doing from their respective supervisors.
So Noemi, that sounds great. I mean, I love that you sort of took the bull by the horns to do education house-wide. And you did that really creatively. I want to swing back to the committee and your meetings. I think you said you meet twice a month. Is that right?
Yes.
So just to kind of bring some specificity to a patient experience committee meeting, can you give us 2 or 3 examples of specific agenda items that your group discussed?
Yes, so we look at our HCAP scores and we discuss the scores to what we're learning from the rounding. So we're looking to see at the feedback, we're looking to identify any trends that might be coming up so that we can identify if it's something system-wide that we can address. And then in addition to looking at the HCAP scores, we're also taking a peek at our Google reviews and our Yelp reviews, because that also gives us really good insight as to what the patients are saying. And then we'll discuss strategies like, you know, if we identify that they're talking about a particular problem, how can we address this so that the next time we come back to the meeting, we'll see what was done and the results. Is it working? Is it not? Should we try something different?
And I hope you're sharing the good news as well as the other news, right? So that we can reinforce our staff when there's a positive review or a positive comment from a patient.
Definitely, most definitely. There's always the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, you know, we like to say that we want to be very transparent. Yep. And, you know, when you get the negative, it's a learning opportunity. We don't want to look at it as, you know, oh my gosh, and beat ourselves over. It's always a learning opportunity. And how can we improve? Absolutely.
And sometimes it's that peer-to-peer positive reinforcement that can be really meaningful, you know, to be recognized in a huddle, for example, because a patient or a family member expressed gratitude. That's a really great way to go. Well, thank you for telling us more about the committee. I'm going to move on over now to another presenter from East LA who serves on your committee. Anna Lagahet is Director of Quality at East Los Angeles Doctors Hospital. So Anna, tell us a little bit about the role that you've played on the committee, and as a member of the quality department, what's been your role in trying to shape and improve patient experience?
Well, thank you. During our meeting, my department helped in strategizing initiatives that enhance the quality of care from a patient and family's perspective. We also, my staff and myself are also helping with the rounding to talk to the patient about and the family to talk about their stay and their experience. Personally, by doing these rounds, I believe that you know, the staff as well as the patient and family feels our presence and they feel supportive. So they mostly give you know, feedback freely when we are doing the rounding.
Great, great. Well, we all know that the HCAP scores are shaped by the Press Ganey surveys that most of our patients receive. So I'm wondering, how does the East Los Angeles team engage with patients to let them know that they might be receiving a survey? What does that process look like?
So during one of our meetings, we have decided that maybe it's good to include the Press Ganey flyer and the welcome envelope that we give to the patient upon admission. So Ed, our Director of Patient Access, helped us in this initiative. So his staff is putting this Press Ganey flyer in the welcome envelope. They also have them, because not all patients are admitted from the ED. We have direct admission, so we have put them in the L&D department, also in the med-surg, and for those patients that come in direct admit. So during discharge, my staff as well as the other nursing leaders, we ask the patient and the family if they have received it, and then if we ask them if they have the chance to look what is inside. Sometimes they did not know and they didn't have the chance to look into that. So we take that opportunity to open up the welcome envelope and see what's inside. And then we show the Press Ganey flyer and we tell them that you might get a phone call or a mail from, you know, from Press Ganey. And we take this opportunity to learn your experience, and feel free to write whatever you feel. And then we will, it is very important for us to use this as our opportunity for improvement.
Got
And
it.
yeah, so we started doing that too.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. Victor, you're chomping at the bit, and I'm not ready for questions yet, but you set such a good example. Go ahead with your question. What you thinking, Victor?
Just, Anna, just curious, or maybe June, when you say the Joint Commission flyer, is that a branded flyer, or is that just what you guys call a set of sort of prompts? Just curious what that looks like, or if you can describe it a little more.
The
It is
Press
a
Ganey
Press Ganey
flyer?
flyer. It's a
Yeah.
it's a flyer from Press Ganey, and Jane helped us put our logo in
Logo.
there. Yeah, so it's logo with the SLA doctors.
So it doesn't say Joint Commission, it's Press Ganey, and it
Press Ganey.
mentions the survey. Victor, if that kind of answered your question, we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. Several of our hospitals are using that flyer. Right now, I'm going to pivot back to June with a couple of maybe big picture questions for you. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of your team's work to really focus in on patient experience and obviously improve your HCAHPS scores? What's been the most challenging? And remember, I told you to keep it real, so give us a real answer. Biggest challenge.
The dips in the score that you mentioned, like, you know, we have shown that we were able to successfully increase our scores in the first month, right? In August, we went from like 14th percentile in July to like 80 something in August, and we were able to maintain it in September. So, and October, and then it dipped down. So it's like, and then we were able to like again increase our numbers, and then we dipped down again last month. So it's the dip. The scores are very like labile as far as like it goes, and it's super extreme. It goes from like the highest, which we achieve like the 92nd percentile, to like 0 at the next month. So, and it's really discouraging, to be honest. And it's like we're scratching our heads because we're like, we can't really pinpoint as far as what's causing the dips, right? And you know, we tried to look into what happened that month. As Noemi said, we discussed this in our, you know, when we meet, if we had more complaints or grievances like that month trends, you know, we discussed the results of the nurse leader rounding during our meeting. But we, you know, it's really discouraging and confusing. But we try to focus on the goals we established. We continue, you know, we try to continue through our process since we know it works. You know, we have proven it works. We consistently, you know, increase our scores over time, even though with the dips. So
Right.
we just keep at it pretty much.
Well, I appreciate your candor. I know from prior conversations with you, it's discouraging, and I promise I haven't jinxed you because I'm always asking you how your scores are. It's not me.
Yeah, and that's really
But I hope that you and the committee can keep your eye on the prize and your eye on the big picture, because you have had such a great trajectory of improvement. I guess one last question for you at this juncture. If you were going to give one piece of advice to another hospital that really wants to get started on examining patient experience more closely and moving the needle, what would you advise?
I think the biggest impact is the nurse leader rounding. You know, if we're all out there rounding, we can capture issues, concerns, complaints in real time. You know, we can address it right away while the patient is still in the hospital, and then we can follow up the next day when we round again, right? If, you know, if that issue or concern was addressed. And also, like any positive feedback or even negative feedback, we can circle back to the staff and share it with them in real time as well, which is really important.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing that, June. You teed it up our next speaker beautifully, because I want to ask a few questions of MJ Sales, who is one of your directors of nursing. So welcome, MJ, and thanks for being part of the discussion. How do you see the nurse leader rounding playing into this whole movement, this whole focus on improving patient experience?
Okay, so thank you for the question. I believe that rounding has got to be one of the most important actions that you can implement as a nurse leader. So as nurse leaders, it's our job to ensure that the care being provided is meeting the quality and patient satisfaction needs, right? And really, there's no better way to find out if you're serving patients well, than to ask them directly or yourself. And also allows you to connect with your patients and your families. Like what June said, it allows you to reinforce care, coach the underperformers, and recognize the ones doing an exceptional job. Right. So I want to point out, too, that although it is equally, if not as important, to also run on your staff. It's like
Good.
that. You guys have heard it saying before, happy wife, happy life. I made my own slogan, like happy staff, higher HCAHPS score, I think. No, because if your staff feel like they're feeling supported, being valued, respected, and heard, guess what? They have a better disposition when it comes to delivering patient care, I believe.
Valued, respected, and heard. I love that. Who doesn't want to be valued, respected, and heard? That's great, MJ. I appreciate it. So I'm going to ask you one of the questions I asked June. From your perspective as a nursing director, what do you think the biggest challenge has been in your mind as your hospital team has really focused in on patient experience?
So I think that anyone here on this forum who does nurse rounding can all agree that not having enough time to do patient rounding on a daily has got to be one of the biggest challenge for me anyway. On a personal level, I think that the language barrier is another factor. I don't speak Spanish very well, so it's kind of unfair for me to pull someone to translate for me. So I would like to add also that using contract labor and being short-staffed also plays in, with a lower patient satisfaction score, because as you can all attest, I'm not saying all, but some contract labor workers, they just don't have this accountability or responsibility or ownership to the place, right? So I'm really working hard and making sure that I'm recruiting the right people and for our unit.
Great. Thanks, MJ. I appreciate it. Before we move on to our next speaker, I see Tracy Seiler, Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Hospital of Gardena, has a question. Tracy, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Hi, guys. So I have a ton of questions, and I'll connect with you, June, because I'm not going to hijack this meeting. But I do have a question about the rounding. So at Gardena, we do leadership rounding, not just nursing. That was my question. Do you require all your leaders to round? And if you do, how do you ensure real-time service recovery? Because that's a challenge for us. The nurses are busy, and we may have somebody from EVS rounding that picks something up, but to do handoff, they're intimidated. So we're just having a challenge with the communication and making sure that we don't find out about an issue when we get our comments in HCAHPS. We want to make sure we do it real time. So, or do you just focus in on nursing rounding only? Right.
So we're doing like nurse leader rounding. So each nursing director is responsible for their own unit to round. And then myself and the quality department, Anna, will also round. And Emma, who is our director of respiratory, also rounds. So I randomly round, mostly in the ICU. Emma rounds usually, and the quality department usually rounds in med-surg tele, but we pretty much have our own units to round.
Great. Tracy, I promise you'll get to ask some more questions a little later. Marco Torres has a question, and then we'll move on to our next presenter. Marco.
Really quickly, do you guys have templates for the validation agenda and the SMART goals that we can borrow and maybe even use those as a playbook for the rest of the facilities?
Yes, we can, we develop a charter so we can, with all the goals, and so we can share that after the meeting or after the forum.
That is awesome, guys. It's only 3:30 and we're already sharing materials. So well done. That's just what we wanted to try to get to today. So thank you. I want to pivot now, speaking of materials, to Ed Villapando, who is Director of Patient Access for East Los Angeles Doctors Hospital. And Ed, we already mentioned a little bit earlier that welcome envelope that has been in use at 3 of our hospitals for the better part of a year, give or take. One of the items in that packet is the Press Ganey flyer. And I'm wondering if you could just tell everyone a little more about that flyer and what else is in the welcome packet so we all kind of know what we're talking about. You're on mute, Ed. Ed, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jane. Sorry about
There
that.
you go. There you go. Thank you.
During the admission process, we included a welcome packet. In the welcome packet, we have informational material that is given to patients as a point of registration. So the information that is included in this packet is welcome letter from our CEO. It's a standard welcome letter. It's in English and Spanish that welcoming the patient. We have instructions on how to register with the patient portal so the patients can access the medical record. We also have some general information on the hospital's visiting hours. And then we also have a handout, give me 1 second, a patient rights handout, patient rights and responsibilities of the patient. And we also have, and the last flyer that we have in this envelope is the Press Ganey flyer. And that is a flyer that is created in English and Spanish, and it's colorful. I'll just show you that if you guys can see, if you guys can see it. Victor wanted to see if form of the actual flyer. So the flyer is just some information letting the patients know that there is going to be, that they're going to receive a survey from the hospital regarding the hospital stay, and that the provider's Press Ganey. And basically that's it. So in this, the folder that we went ahead, the envelope that we created for the patients is, it's also a tool for the patients to use during their admission process. Any information that is given to them during the course of their admission, they can go ahead and insert that information in the folder. So when they do go home, they'll be able to pull up any or reference any of the forms that they got during their admission process. And along with that, they'll be able to see the Press Ganey flyer for their information, so they can just remind them that they're going to get a call from Press Ganey regarding the actual hospital admission.
And thank you, Ed. I think all the materials in the welcome envelope are in English and Spanish. Is that right?
Correct. Because we have a front English and the back is in Spanish.
Okay. And so on the Press Ganey flyer specifically, because I think, letting patients know ahead of time they might be getting a survey and encouraging them to take part, that is part of this welcome envelope. But do you know if the flyer is being used in other ways during the patient's stay at East LA?
Yes, our goal in the admitting department is to set the tone for the patient experience. And then when the patient, during the rounding, in the morning during rounding, the nursing staff will go ahead and say, oh, welcome, blah, 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 blah. Did you guys get an envelope from the admitting department? And then the patient will say, yes, we did, or no, we didn't. And then at that point, we do like a service recovery. We'll go ahead and get the patient welcome envelope and give it to the patient and say, in the envelope, some information regarding the hospital's visiting hours. You got some patient rights and responsibility. And there's also a flyer regarding Press Ganey. So that is the discussion that's being conducted with the patient during the patient rounding. And then it just gives the patients an idea of what's gonna, what they're gonna get once the patient leaves the hospital. We also have a very good check and balance when it comes down to our goal in the admitting. Let me go back a little bit. Our goal in the admitting department is to make sure that every patient that gets admitted into the hospital receives a welcome envelope. And if it doesn't receive a welcome envelope, that information is brought over to the patient committee, the patient experience patient committee meeting, and then they'll give me a list and say, these patients didn't get a welcome envelope, and I go back to the department and let them know how important it is for every patient to get a welcome envelope. So we do have a check and balance. The committee is very diligent in making sure that this information is communicated, that the patients have it, and that the information readily available for them during their admission process.
Great,
And
great.
to the hospital.
Okay, Ed, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I want to move on now to Lila Quintana, who is Director of Case Management for East LA as well as for Huntington Park. And Lila, I'm excited to hear you tell us a little bit about a process that you have in place at East LA for talking with patients about their experience after their discharge home. So welcome, Lila. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? Lila, you're on mute. And
Sorry.
by the way, Lila, I'm sorry, before you start, we have a few folks who are off camera and they're not muted, and we're hearing a little background noise now and then. So if everybody could be sure they're muted unless they're speaking or asking a question, we'd appreciate it. Okay, Lila, tell us about your process for patients after discharge home.
Good afternoon, everyone. And this process has been in place when I started in January. Our social worker makes the follow-up phone call for patients that are discharged from the hospital. She usually asks a couple of questions. Usually the three key questions are, did your nurse explain your discharge instructions? Do you have a follow-up appointment with a primary care doctor? Do you have any problems or concerns while you were in the hospital? And our social worker would log these responses on our quality follow-up phone call log. So Anna and her team would be able to look into that and see which patients have concerns and have grievances or any escalation that would be needed.
Great. So Lila, how do you think that very specific process has contributed to the improvement in patient experience and HCAHPS scores at East LA?
For most part, when I think it's because it's a social worker. They gleam into more personable interaction with our patients, and some of our patients have seen our social worker. She said, "Oh, I remember you. You are the one who did my assessment." So it's a more personable. They know that somebody called them after the hospital stay, and I'm listening to the calls with my social workers, and they get them to open up a lot and express their satisfaction or dissatisfaction.
And I'm sure your social workers hear both. So then what happens with those comments? I imagine they're documented in some way. And then what? What happens next?
It's in our quality log for follow-up phone calls, and Anna follows up on that. And if there's really something for service recovery, we would have to reach out to the patient or to concerned department.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. I've got a few more people I want to chat with during our forum today, but I'm going to take a pause at this moment and just see if anyone has a question they'd like to ask. Anyone who has been talking thus far, if you could just kind of put your hand up, I'll call on you, or I guess the people who aren't on camera, if you want to shout out a question. Any questions at this juncture? Okay, well, we'll keep moving. Oh, Lance, I saw you on the road. Lance, welcome. What's your question, Lance?
Yes, ma'am. I have a couple questions for June. On your meetings, is there any physician involvement? Are they participating in the meetings at all with patient satisfaction on your patient satisfaction meetings?
No, we don't involve them in the meeting per se, but if there's any feedback regarding the physician, then we circle back to the physician and let them know about the feedback.
I was just curious about that. And then later when the social worker calls on that follow-up, do they mention that the PREP scanning survey is going to be coming, or
yes,
prompt them?
Yeah, that's part
Yes.
of the, it's kind of like a reminder for them, like, by the
Yes.
way, there's gonna be the survey that's coming up.
Thanks for
That's
your
all I had.
questions, Lance. I appreciate that. Well, we put the spotlight on June early on, and Tracy's asked a question. We've got a couple of other CNOs that are in the house today, and I want to be inclusive and see what's on their minds. Colleen Bauer is Chief Nursing Officer for Community Hospital of Huntington Park. And Colleen, I'm wondering what you might share from Huntington Park. Anything that you all have tried or that you think is maybe getting a little traction with patient experience at Huntington Park?
Okay, well, first of all, congratulations, June and team, for keeping up those scores. I know it's not easy because it's super frustrating for us as well. We dip all the time. And so this has been an amazing forum. Thank you, Jane, for putting it on. I see that we have a lot of different processes that are not being followed all the way from admitting all the way through. So this is a lot of clarity, and I'm really grateful for that. We have tried so many things. Right now we're doing nurse rounding, and then her team are really proactive in the rounding. We have done, and then her team have also done bedside reporting. And we have not had a patient experience committee though, and I think that is really key to what you're doing and having your nurse leaders a part of that. So we have done, and I can't even name how many things that we have tried, from the Martys to the interpretation, what is it that we're missing? And I hear it all the time, we're missing something. And so this is very encouraging, and I like that you're doing the medication cards. I'd love to hear more about that. So that's really it. I'm just I really like this, and I'm glad it was brought up. And you guys had some really great ideas, and I have a really good team here, and I think that we can really bounce off of this and do some more so that we can get our scores up.
You do have a great team. You do have a great team at Huntington Park, Colleen. So thanks for sharing that. We're all here to support you and support each other. I want to turn next to Carol Ramirez, who is currently serving as interim chief nursing officer at Coast Plaza Hospital. And Carol, you have a lot of experience in teaching AIDIT. And I want to be sure in this forum we touch on that. I think somebody mentioned it earlier. Just, what is that acronym and why is the practice of AIDIT important in patient experience? What can you tell us, Carol?
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Yes, when I first came to Coast Plaza, one of my asks was to focus on patient experience, and I've done that in the past. So AIDIT is a tool that's the evidence-based, shown to improve patient communication overall. And I heard from June and her staff about some of the things that they're focusing on, and definitely communication is one of the most important pieces or what we need to focus on. And AIDIT, which stands for Acknowledge, Introduce, Duration, and Explanation, and Thank You, again, is giving our staff an idea.
Sorry, I need to excuse myself. There's a emergency C-section. I need to go. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Noemi. I'm sorry, Carol, go ahead.
No worries. So it's shown to really improve not just the communication, but also improve the connection between, one person with the other. We won't go through the whole AIDIT, but it's not about just the acronym, but how do we actually put that in play? Mm-hmm. So acknowledging, really, if we want to improve communication, what is the first thing we need to do when we have that first encounter with the patient? How do we acknowledge our patients? Do we maintain eye contact? Do we call them by their name? Do we, make sure that we listen? So there's different things that we can do just with basic acknowledging. How do we introduce ourselves? Do we just go in the room and just say, I'm here to do something? I need to let them know my name is Carol. What is my role? and my name is Carol and I'm the housekeeper. My name is Carol, I'm the housekeeper. I'm here to take your trash out. My name is Mary Carol, I'm the respiratory therapist. So every single person that has an encounter with that patient, it's important that they introduce themselves by name and by role, and then explaining what am I here to do. And duration in a hospital, it's really, really important for our patients, as mentioned at the beginning. Wait times are very stressful for our patients. The anxiety level of being in a hospital is really high. So making sure that we explain if they have a question, how, when do I get my lunch? When is the doctor going to come and see me? When am I going to get the test? When am I going to go for surgery? So those are the questions that we really need to make sure that we address when the patients are asking, and in a timely manner. So being able to provide a reasonable wait time rather than soon. We don't say soon. Try to provide more of a specific range of how long that may take. And then I always like the whole explanation if they have the questions, and then showing our appreciation to our patients and always say thank you. So, yeah, it's not just for our nursing or staff with our patients, but also I emphasize aided with each other, our co-workers. So improving communication for me is very important.
I love that. I see some heads nodding, so that's great. Quick follow-up question, Carol, since you have spent a lot of time teaching ADIT, is there ever resistance? I mean, what are the barriers to either learning the practice in the first place or just practicing it? What are the barriers that might come up that would keep us from practicing ADIT?
I've gotten some feedback in my the classes that I've taught here at Coast Plaza, and I think it's more when we're asking, this is the way we should communicate and use this ADIT. It's been more about, well, we do it, but what about the other departments? When we've had this, encounters with another department, they're not using ADIT. So, that's what I see, not so much the resistance is, I know you're asking this of me, of others. So it was a valid, concern to bring up, because now that it's about, I talk about consistency, about everybody doing same. So, there's a little bit about, oh, how come someone from this department? And I said, oh, we'll get to that department. But I had a really good experience, and I have to acknowledge the respiratory department. They are excellent. It didn't feel scripted when we did the validations. Basically, when they go in and talk to their patients, it was just natural. And that's where we want to get to. We're not scripting. We don't want to tell you what to say. It's just making a very natural conversation and using ADIT when they're communicating with each other.
That's great. Carol, thank you for sharing that. Lori Ashiro from Coast Plaza has a question. Lori, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to piggyback off of what Carol just said. Prior to Carol coming to Coast Plaza, and this was actually probably several years before that, I had the, the honor of actually starting the ADIT training at Coast Plaza. And that was under DONIPA. And it was basically a collaboration of all of the managers, all of the directors. And you had asked, okay, so what did you find as far as working with the, whether it's the nurses, engineering? It was everybody. It was all the departments. And I have to say that the resistance was more because it's a change. We are so used to doing what we were trained to do. We're almost on autopilot. But the important thing is to stress, okay, so this is the importance, because we have to make sure that we reach out, not just to the patients, not to the families. Like Carol was saying, we have to reach out to one another as well, because, it really is a team approach. It's not just nursing. It's not just respiratory. It's not just social services. It's everybody. And Carol has done a really good job getting this team together for patient experience. And, I hear all the other hospitals and they're saying it gets discouraging with the low scores. And it really is, because, we are trying so hard to get the better scores, to reach out to the patients and to the families. And, it is a process. So even if we do the ADA training, you know, and we actually did an interdisciplinary, so it wasn't just like the social worker or supervisor would do the ADA training with the social workers. We actually switched departments just to make sure that, you know, the training was on the up and up.
Great.
But and it's Jane, like you were saying, it's you want to keep your eyes on the prize.
That's it.
And sometimes that takes longer than what we hope, but it's nice having, I guess, all 4 hospitals, and it's good because it's a systems approach, and that's
Great.
what we need to do, just for
Great.
continuity.
Thanks for weighing in, Lori. I've got a couple more people I want to get to before we close out the hour. Tracy, we heard from you earlier with a question. Tracy Seiler is Chief Nursing Officer for Memorial Hospital of Gardena. What have you heard this afternoon, Tracy, that resonates with you?
Hi, so we have a service excellence committee. I guess the thing that impresses me is that you've got East LA meets twice a month. And then I want to hear more about that, and we don't have to on this forum, but I'm going to pick June's brain a little bit about what measurable or deliverables do you talk about? Because what we do is we take our HCAHPS scores and we look at them, we look at the comments, but I don't think it's on everybody's radar as a priority once a month. I think I like the strategy that you guys have taken with the every 2 weeks to make it a real priority. We are implementing and picking up all of our patients in the ED and doing handoff down there, which will give kind of a welcoming committee. We're happy you're here, relieving anxiety, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that, because we do not do the welcome packets here, and that is going to kind of take the place of having that handoff downstairs. Because there's nothing worse than a patient going upstairs and having nobody in the room, or people running away or not running away, but just they're busy with other patients.
I hope they don't run away.
I know, right? So, but I really want the SMART goal template and really kind of take a look at making that time that, you know, it's an hour. I mean, we hate meetings, but I want this meeting to be meaningful. So that's what I've taken away is really, we have it in place, but I want to make the most of it. So
great. Thanks,
yeah.
Tracy. Sure. I want to move on to a question I want to pose to our Chief Medical Officer for Pipeline Health, Dr. Vince Green, who knows a lot about HCAHPS and Press Ganey surveys. And I'm curious, Vince, what one comment or idea that you've heard this afternoon bears reinforcement, or is there any one point that maybe hasn't come up in the conversation that we should think about?
There's lots of stuff, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I think Noemi was talking about, you know, sharing the good and the bad. And one of the things I wanted the group to know, Press Ganey has done a lot of research on what works and what doesn't work. And what they recommend is the 5-to-1 ratio. We like to focus a lot on what broke, but in reality, we should be focusing 5 times of the energy on what did work. You know, so you get patients that are happy. Let's not only celebrate that and applaud that with the team, but also analyze what made the patient happy. And replicating that to your other patients is going to be far more beneficial. I think we're very good. You know, let's say, you know, we have a Klebsiella-Arcadi. We're going to dissect and do a root cause analysis on how that Klebsiella-Arcadi or that hypoglycemic event occurred. That's what we are. There's clinicians all over this meeting, and we will analyze the heck out of it to see how we don't reproduce it. However, with patient experience, it's better to look at what worked and try to replicate it. And I think just want to share that 5-to-1 ratio that Press Ganey had beat in my head. The other 2 things, which just for the patient experience teams as they start to grow, we talked a lot about nurse leader rounding. And again, the research has shown that as you do leadership rounding, whether it's with nursing or just non-nursing, leadership rounding works. It works, it works, it works. And so everyone knows that. However, the parts that we need to make sure we're reinforcing is interval rounding, where we get our nurses to really go back in the room. Everyone talks about hourly rounding, which I think isn't feasible. And even Press Ganey doesn't recommend hourly rounding, but just touching in with the patient saying, hey, I'll be back in 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. So that interval rounding is critical. And we've been stressing a lot about bedside shift report changes. I think we really got to, I think that needs to be really the energy of our patient experience teams. So how do we do a good bedside shift report that incorporates the patient and the patient's family into that, so they can be a part of listening to the whiteboard and how to direct our guidance. So 5-to-1 for everyone. Remember that 5-to-1, 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 bedside shift reports, interval rounding. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. I'm going to quickly pivot over to Kathy Germain, who is our Pipeline Corporate Director of Case Management. And Kathy, I know you're passionate about patient experience. What did you hear this afternoon that bears emphasizing?
Yeah, well, Vince is a hard act to follow, so I will say that I agree with him. But what I heard, and for those of you who don't know, I do patient experience at the new employee orientations. So I heard a lot about AIDIT, and I loved what Carol said about understanding what it means, but making that a conversation, right? And I think that, so passions, one, AIDIT, knock on the door, say who you are, why you're there, look at the patient in the eye. I think that goes so far. I do love, Vince, what you said about this 5-to-1, but also, again, bedside shift report. I think if we're going to do one really, really, really good thing, one thing really, really good, bedside shift report. Make sure they're both nurses are in there. Make sure they're talking to the patient if possible, feasible. Update the whiteboard. So I have been in many bedside shift reports. I've seen it done very well and I've seen it not. But I think in our hospitals, you know, if we do that. So that's number 2. So 1, AIDIT, because that just goes along. Introduce yourself. Why are you there? That just flows into bedside shift report. And I'm going to say, Noemi, what I really like, because I'm a firm believer of this, this is not just nursing. Every leader, not just nurse leaders, every leader should round. Everyone should round on patients. So I heard you say that you did education housewide, so I want to commend you on that.
Thanks, Kathy. We appreciate you. I have one more person I'm going to be boring and ask the very same question from a quality perspective. Dexter DeGoma is our Corporate Senior Director of Quality for Pipeline Health. So Dexter, what did you hear this afternoon that bears reinforcement?
You know, Jay, thank you so much. You know, so proud of all of you guys, June and your team. I mean, I've, you know, been to your facilities and just seen people at work, and really true and genuine. One of the things that I just want to encourage everybody is really just when you're rounding, you know, making sure that we're, you know, inclusive of everyone. As Kathy said, you know, make sure that we encourage everybody, all leaders, to be rounding as well, because that's really important to support the organization and each other. But also what's important that I've seen in my past lives, that's really also important when we're rounding on patients, we also round on our nurses and our, you know, our other staff, because I think it's really important that we hear them as well as to what their challenges are and their barriers. And when you know, they always say happy nurses means happy patients, right? And so we want to get ahead of that game as well. So, you know, kudos to all of you. We are here. My quality team, Anna, Yamil at your facilities, are here to support you. We are going to start pivoting from what we call performance improvement to help you deliver performance excellence. So just want to make sure that you guys know that we are here to support all of you.
Thank you, Dexter. I want to thank everybody for attending and hanging in there and asking good questions. And thank you to all the speakers who put up with me and all my questions, because I think you shared a lot of really worthwhile information and ideas. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn it back to our Pipeline Health CEO, Bob Allen, for the last word. Bob.
Oh my, you'll be sorry. You know, I think those of you who participate in our MORs, monthly operational reviews, will agree quality is a big piece of what we discuss. I'll never forget when June started hitting these numbers. She said, "So there, Bob." And I really appreciate how she internalized the challenge. I'm a little sorry to hear that it's discouraging at times for her. You know, when you have a low N, 5 or maybe 10, you're going to have ups and downs. But over time, once you hit about 30 in that sample, you've got a real good score. So you're going to have ups and downs. We need to experience, you know, we need to accept that. But the key is whether or not you're on a pathway. I'm going to encourage everybody here to take some of the tactics and lessons learned here today, take them back to your facilities, do something different tomorrow than you did today, see where this takes us. The key here isn't your HCAHPS score. The key is whether or not a patient feels cared for. And we'll use the HCAHPS score to judge whether or not we're moving in the right direction or not. I know you all care, as I do, and looking forward to seeing where this takes us. We're certainly going to look to you for feedback and what the next steps might be. Your input, which has been outstanding today, is critical to this. So thanks again for your time, everybody. We'll be in touch soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have
Bravo.
a good day, everyone.
Thank
Thank you. Congrats, June and team.
Thank you.